So welcome everyone to the 2019 Preschool Mindfulness Summit. I'm really happy to introduce our next guest, Dr. Christopher Willard. He's been on our summit last year and gave us some great advice and information, and really excited to have him back. He's teaches at Harvard Medical School, and he has a private practice as a therapist, and he has several books: Growing Up Mindful, Raising Resilience, and a new book that we're very excited about, Alpha Breaths, which we're going to hear about, which is specifically for preschool children. And I also just wanted to mention he has a really great TED Talk that you can watch about happiness and how that affects our brain and creativity and things. So welcome, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me again. This is always such a pleasure to be reconnected with you, Helen. So yeah, this is fun. And everybody out there watching too.
Yeah. So tell us about, because I'm very excited about this. I think it's going to be a great resource for parents and teachers of preschoolers. So tell us a little bit about how you came up with this idea and what's in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. This is probably the book I'm most excited after, writing almost a dozen books, some of which, are a few hundred pages and take years and years to write. And then this one, my friend and I sat, got on the phone with each other and sat down and wrote in maybe about 45 minutes. And yet I'm probably the most excited about this of anything that I've done. And this just really actually kind of came out of, I was with it's actually been years. The publication process just takes forever. When my son was probably 2 and he's 4.5 now, we were reading this wonderful Eric Carle book that was just kind of asking kids to, do things like beat your chest like a gorilla and, stump your feet like an elephant. And he was able to do it. And it was so cool to see that. And then I was just, kind of thinking about books for kids and how many alphabet books are out there, and could I combine something that is active for kids to do, which is what the Alpha Breaths book is all about, with something like an alphabet book, and then reached out to my friend Dan Rechtschaffen, who I'm sure a lot of folks in the audience know. He's an absolutely wonderful mindful educator and mindfulness educator, written a few great books. And he'd had some of these practices already that were kind of similar. There's these different kind of fun breathing practices. And so I called him up and said, hey, you want to do this thing? And he said, yeah, absolutely. And so from there, we came up with this idea of this alphabet book that just has these really fun practices that involve movement and involve imagination and involve animals and involve all these things that we know, like especially our littlest kids, our nursery school kids just love. And so that's really what inspired it. And then the illustrations have just, started trickling in recently, and those are really fun. Actually, probably by the time this goes live, we're actually going to be doing, sort of the 26 weeks leading up to the release date, just releasing a new letter every week on social media so folks can see those great illustrations. So that's kind of where the
cover, and it looks really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
So tell us about some of the title is amazing. I mean, just great. And so tell us what some of the alpha breaths are.
Yeah, the title felt like just one of those like lucky moments where it's like, boom, it just comes to you. And I love the title right there. And we actually have some other, we're actually like working on translating it into Spanish, where we have a respiracionario. And actually, I know you're in Portugal. My friend in Brazil and I are actually creating kind of a Portuguese version. So I'm actually happy to send you that, Helen, if you want to play with that. But I totally blanked on, what are some of the practices? Right. So what are these actual practices we're talking about? Well, I mean, I think I can kind of, go through and preview some of these, and some of these I think I went over in the summit last year, but we have things like A is for the alligator breath.
Yeah.
And so we can hold our arms out like this. And I've watched actually like a group of preschool kids get in a circle and do alligator breaths. And you want to make sure they don't bite each other. That's very important. But it's breathing in and breathing out. And my friend Daniel, who I wrote this with, really likes, breathing in. And then when you breathe out, you really snap your jaws shut so that you get that sensation. And again, right, when we think about little kids, right, they love the movement, they love the imagination, but it helps them to focus by having that snap and having that movement and having that alligator in their mind. Because if you just say to kids, do some breathing, right, they don't know what that means. Sometimes they don't even know that they're breathing, right? So we make it fun and all of that, or the butterfly breath where we can flap our wings, breathing in and breathing back out and breathing in and breathing out. So those are one of my other favorites from the book. And I also, just over time, kind of feeling inspiration from different places in my own journey with mindfulness. And one of my first exposures to mindfulness, I was maybe 20, 22, something like that. And my parents actually I had dropped out of college. My parents didn't know what to do with me. They dragged me on this retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh, and it ended up being, of course, totally life transforming for me. But, Thich Nhat Hanh has these lovely kind of verses like, breathing in, I see myself as a mountain, and breathing out, I feel solid. And so, for example, M, right, is just breathing in, visualizing ourselves as a mountain, and breathing out, feeling solid. Or when I was a younger kid, I actually learned, my mom was a psychologist also, so she, was sort of following what the trends were of the era in the 1980s. And of course, the work of Herbert Benson, the relaxation response, was a real precursor in many ways to the popularity of mindfulness. But things like progressive muscle relaxation, right? Squeezing and releasing different muscle groups in your body that calms down the body. And of course, that calms down the nervous system, which calms down the mind and all of that. So we have like the ice breath, for example, which is breathing in and tensing all your muscles really tight, like you're frozen in a block of ice. And then on the out breath, you can just allow that ice to begin to melt. And breathing in again, tensing your muscles like a block of ice, and breathing out, beginning to melt. So it's bringing in some of this other stuff. When I was a kid, I remember being at nature camp and walking in the woods as quietly as we could. And then kind of years later realizing, that was kind of like a mindful walking practice. Mm-hmm. And so we have, for N, we have the ninja breath, which is, I'm actually thinking about writing a book about like all ninja training exercises, because that'd be, get some 8-year-old boys interested in mindfulness. So maybe that's next. But the ninja breath is like just trying to breathe as silently as possible. So we can try this together, just breathing in and breathing out. Because a ninja has to be stealthy and sly and sneaky, not make a sound. Breathing in and breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. And if you notice, right, just that little, let's try to not make any sound at all, right? That takes so much more focus in the brain. So if you're focused on that, not trying to make a sound and imagining yourself like a ninja, you really are training yourself to focus that much more, because it's, it's fun, but also takes a lot of focus to not make a sound. So these are a few of them. And of course, the one that's always popular, which I learned from Daniel, is the superhero breaths. And these have been spreading in popularity, I kind of learned about them from him. And I said, hey, can I use some of these? And he said, these were invented by a kindergartner. So it's totally cool to do these superhero breaths. But that's also kind of what I love about the book, is it invites kids to then start making up their own practices. Right. So then they, and actually this, this happened in my son's nursery school. The kids, I gave them, some advanced, materials on the book, and they got really excited about it. And the kids started making up their own breaths. Right. And that was just like so cool and so fun. And again, I don't know always how mindful the superhero breath is, for example, but it's teaching kids to start to be aware of their breath. Right. And that's so key. They start by being aware of their breath when they're 3 or 4 and 5. Then they start to regulate their breath a little bit when they're 6, 7, and 8. They let go of the, superhero aspect of it, or the holding their hands with the hot chocolate aspect of it. And they're just aware of the fact that they're breathing. And then, it just becomes this normal thing. But it starts with having fun and making it playful. And then it becomes a little bit more formalized as they get older, just as everything does. And then hopefully they'll learn the alphabet at the same time. So
I think it's fabulous. I'm really excited to see the book and to share it with the schools that I work with. And I just love, the whole bringing in the imagination and capturing the kids' attention. And like you said, then, they go on and make their own.
Right.
Which is what they do, right?
And then they have that ownership over it. They're like, I made this breath and I want to share it with other people and I'm going to do it. And that's just so fun to see in the kids. Yeah.
So that comes out in April, right?
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about how you, what practices you use at home with your son. You just have one son, I believe, right?
I've got, my 4.5-year-old son, and now I've got an 8-month-old daughter who just started moving, which has presented a whole series of new challenges for everyone. Probably most of all, our son, who's needing to learn how to be a little bit more patient. Yes. He sees her crawling over to his tower of blocks right now. Suddenly, his world is threatened in a different way.
So what kind of things do you do at home as a parent with your children?
Well, we always have the intention to do a little bit of mindfulness before meals, and I have to say that's been really hard to maintain. But what we do is we do a little bit before bed. And we do a little bit when he's sometimes, not when he's having like a total meltdown, but when he's like on the ramp up to a meltdown, or when he's on the ramp down from the meltdown. But we do stuff before bed. So sometimes it'll be, like a alligator breath or hot chocolate breath or something like that. But often it's a bit more of like an observational thing. Okay. Like, let's just look around your room and notice something you hadn't noticed before. Let's look around your room and notice something of each color of the rainbow. Or let's just lay here for a moment until we notice 3 or 4 sounds that we can hear. Or we've been doing some mindful hugs. We've been doing some mindful high fives before bed. Can you, when do you feel our hands are touching? And can, even after our mindful high five, can you feel where you felt it on your hand? Can you still feel Dad's hand? Can I still feel Leo's hand? Like, the imprint of it. So we do some of these things as well as doing some breathing. And people probably know this, but the take 5 breath of breathing in and breathing out as we count on our fingers through breathing in and breathing out, up and down, counting up all the way to the last finger. He really loves that one. I think that's a nice contained one for kids. And actually, Daniel and I are trying to figure out how to do, after alpha breaths, like a 1 to 10 counting book. we've got the like take 5 breath, but we're like, and we've got, some other ones, but we're trying to get to, like 6 is a really hard one. We're trying to figure out what's a breath for 6. So if anyone has any suggestions, feel free to email us. But those are some of the things that we do with Leo, and that's been really fun.
Yeah.
And then again, I think trying to point out just from time to time, just, can you notice your feet on the ground? And can you notice just kind of noticing things in the world, or talking about, we haven't really done a mindful eating, but kind of talking about, this raisin used to be a grape and it came from really far away. And let's sort of think about the journey and all the ways it connects us to other people, and kind of just telling that story, I think also just helps them, feel more kind of connected to the world. Just see the, kind of what Thich Nhat Hanh might call interbeing of things. And that really leads to more compassion and feeling connection with other people. So those are some of the ways we bring it into the house. And then, of course, my wife and I trying to practice whenever we can. You'll probably think this is funny. Once my son was born, it was really hard to, the first few months I actually was able to practice. And then, it got really hard to practice for a number of years. Then I was kind of able to get back to my cushion for a while. And then, of course, we had another baby, and then it all went out the window again. And, one of the things that changed when he had a baby sister was he started watching screens a little bit more. So he watches Daniel Tiger's, this wonderful show about sort of social emotional learning. And so he watches that often, and he really likes it when we watch it together. And so I don't know which is better, to be present with him in the show or to try to be present with myself, but I actually often take that 22 minutes or whatever it is, and he's sitting next to me or he's sitting on my lap, and the show is going in front of us on my computer. And I just close my eyes and I just focus on sensations in my body and focus on my breath. And at that, the time that he's watching his show actually becomes this kind of practice time for me, which is, actually, honestly, again, because we've also got an 8-month-old, become a time that I often end up falling asleep without meaning to. But that's a kind of a time that I do have where I try to sneak a little bit of practice in. And I don't know if that's always.
That's the reality, isn't it?
Right.
Young kids and
yeah.
things when you can. And
Right.
I love all the things that you've said, because they're all really simple things. And like you said, you just make the time when it
Right.
works, and all the simple things you do with your son. It's just moments, really.
Yeah, right. That's what we can get.
Surprises, but it, when you do that regularly, it makes an impact, doesn't it? So,
right.
So that's great. Can you tell us some, maybe some tips or ideas for teachers? So if you have a class of, say, 20 or 30 preschoolers, how would you start to introduce mindfulness into the classroom?
Yeah, I would just preschool is such an amazing opportunity because the kids are so open to stuff. They don't have that judgment of trying to start a mindfulness program when they're in, what we in North America would call middle school, right? That sort of 12, 13, 14 age where they're way too cool for it, or it's lame, or what's this new stupid thing the teacher wants us to do, right? When we're able to start in preschool, it's such a gift because the kids are probably going to be open to it, and we can make it playful and fun, and it can just be a part of circle time, and it can be a part of something positive. I think what we don't want to do is have, mindfulness be what happens in the timeout chair, or when a kid's having a difficult time or they're acting out, we sort of, tell them to go do mindfulness to calm down. I think we really want to have kids hopefully make that association on their own at some point. But I think we want to not have it be associated with punishment in any way. So just keeping it this positive thing of, we all do 5 breaths during circle time. And maybe every so often we'll do some mindful walking that we don't call mindful walking, but we call it ninja walking, or we call it just walking as quietly as we can without making a sound. We make it something of a game. And in that way, right, it just becomes this kind of normal thing. And the beautiful thing is that then down the road, it becomes normal. So then I actually just had this amazing conversation with a parent who was saying that it was a kid with a parent of a preschool kid who's in preschool with my kid, but then also is in the local public school system where I've also done some consulting. And the parent was saying, oh, they're doing this cool breast stuff in our kids' nursery school, but then they're also doing it in the elementary school. Like, so it's like a lot of the same stuff they're actually doing in like second and third grade. And I totally bit my lip. I wasn't like, oh, that's because of me, but it was like, it was actually really cool because now the practices are growing along with the kids. And so the kids are not resistant to it. And the teachers are less resistant to it because they're like, what's this new weird thing you want me to do with the kids? Like, what do I have to learn? It's like, actually, the kids are half teaching the teachers about it by the time they're in second, third, fourth grade because they've had it in preschool. And so it doesn't have to be this heavy lift for the elementary school or the primary school to bring it in. And then it's not a heavy lift for the middle school to start to bring it in. And then, by the time the kids are in high school, mindfulness has grown with them. It's grown throughout the schools. And it's just part of what you do. And it doesn't have to be this new, weird, wacky thing that we're trying to put in the high school. I mean, we want to do that, try to get it into high schools, but we can start when kids are young. And that's how a school transforms, a district transforms, a whole culture can transform is starting with younger kids and reinforcing it. But I do think things like circle time or maybe a few breaths before the teacher starts reading a story, something like that can kind of help the kids all focus. Like, let's just notice a few sounds and distractions, and then let's move our attention to the teacher and to the book that they're holding up. Right? These are ways of just making it totally normal, but also helping kids focus. And again, really not having it be, you're not paying attention, go do 3 hot chocolate breaths. You're not, you're being naughty. You just, bit that other kid on the playground. Now go sit in the timeout chair and focus on sensations in the soles of your feet. Like, that's just, yeah.
Yeah, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask you anyways. How important do you think it is for as a society or around the world to bring these practices into preschools? Considering the state of the world at the moment and everything that's happening.
Yeah, I think we're all going to agree on this answer, but I think it really is just so much more important than ever. And I think it's interesting. I think I was just in India last week at this mindfulness summit, which felt like the most ridiculous thing in the world that I was over there talking about mindfulness. And I was with a lot of other presenters who were coming from Europe and North America. And I was with presenters who were from India. And I was with a lot of presenters who were kind of had heritage from India, but then their families had been in Europe or in England or other parts of the world for a while also. And just having this interesting conversation about how much sort of, it's kind of reductive to say the West and the East, but how much these different parts of the world are all looking to each other in these different ways. And I think everywhere we go, though, in the world, we're speeding up and we're multitasking and we're getting busier and we're inundated with digital information and social media and horrifying news stories at this incredible pace that's so hard to sort out and process. And I think that the more, and I think that's why mindfulness is growing in popularity. I think, it's this counterbalance. It makes sense as our whole culture gets speeded up and busier down to younger and younger ages, right? Thank goodness. But yet also, of course, there's this counterweight of, oh, this is why mindfulness is so popular and so growing in popularity right now, because it needs to. And so we're looking, in some ways to other traditions, other parts of the world, those of us in this part of the world for what solutions they have and what solutions they've had over time. But they're also getting busier and busier. And so we have so much to learn from each other and teach each other about these practices and practices like this and share what we know is best for just all kinds of human beings, which is not just being super connected and multitasking and doing a million things at once and getting busier and busier all the time. We know that's not what's best for us. So it's exciting to see the excitement in bringing this stuff so many different places and how eager people are to be practicing this themselves and sharing it with kids and planting these seeds for a different world in a really deliberate way. We weren't very deliberate about how we planted the seeds of our technology use, but we can be deliberate about how we plant these seeds of slowing down and mindfulness.
Yeah, I love that, everything that you said, because those, we see lots, well, I see lots of schools really interested and excited about it and want to bring this in, but then there's also some areas in schools that are very resistant to that. But I think, the things that you just said make very good arguments to explain why mindfulness should come into schools, and why schools are usually very tight on time and
right.
want to give up. But it is such a simple thing that it doesn't have to take a lot of time, does it, to bring it in if you just integrate it throughout the day and things. So can you give us, oh, sorry.
Yeah, just integrating it, like there may not be tons of time, as kids get into high school to take time out of a busy lesson plan to bring mindfulness in. But again, hopefully kids have learned the elements of it by that time, or maybe they get it then a little bit more through their soccer coach or their hockey coach, or, they get it through, not with their English teacher, for tons and tons of time, but maybe when they have to do a class presentation, they learn a little bit about how to regulate their anxiety and their stress in that moment, or as they prepare for tests, how to use some of these practices to help themselves calm down. And of course, we know that these practices are more than just about calming down and about getting yourself into a way that you can focus. But that is also a part of where they can be helpful and where we can start to get kids excited about them. And then hopefully from there, right, it becomes more of a way of living for the kids and the parents and the teachers and everybody. But yeah.
Just before we end, can you give us some suggestions for teachers or parents for their own practice? Like if you think, I'm sure you think it's important that they practice as well, so that they can show to the kids what they're not just telling the kids. But what kind of things besides, meditation, of like sitting meditation, what other kinds of things are there that teachers and parents might think about doing themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I think real self-care, not just lip service to self-care. And again, when we can, we're busy, right, as parents and teachers and all of that. Slowing down and doing one thing at a time, trying not to multitask, right? As a parent, as a professional, I'm, kind of often trying to do multiple things at once. But it's like, I don't have to walk down, I parked my car a few blocks away and I walked here. I don't have to have my phone in my hand or be listening to music when I do that. I can be feeling my feet on the ground. I can be looking out around me for what's beautiful or interesting in the world. I can be even playing with, can I walk totally silently and focus myself? I can be drinking my coffee and just really focused on drinking my coffee. I can be, sitting next to my son, while he's watching Daniel Tiger and try to just focus on my breath, or if I'm focused on, sort of the show is distracting me or something, I can just try to tune into the sounds of it, without the meaning of the words, or see if I can tune into, just noticing what are my emotional reactions, like as I'm watching it with him or something. So we do have these ways that we can live mindfully, if not always be practicing mindfulness on our cushion. And then I do think practicing gratitude, appreciation, these kind of what I might think of as heartfulness practices. And then I think really practicing a lot of self-compassion and self-forgiveness is so important as parents, because we're going to mess up. We're going to screw up. Our kids are going to have a hard time. We're going to lose it with them. We're going to snap at them. We're going to snap at our co-parents or our, ex-partners or our current partners. Like, we're going to lose it at work and be imperfect teachers. And, whether it's having a bad day or just having a day where we feel like we didn't, do enough, or we're going to have our heart broken by these kids. And so really taking care of ourselves and knowing that that's part of life, and being compassionate with ourselves and kind to ourselves, and creating space to be kind, of course, to the people around us, right? To our coworkers, to the kids, to trying to think about, and being aware of those times when we get so burned out. This is that holiday time of year that you and I are talking. I know this is getting released later. But it's a time when our attention is being pulled in so many ways, where there's so many, we're saying, I should all the time, right? That dangerous S word. I should be more kind. I should be, more patient. I should be cooking the perfect holiday dinner. I should be, having these kinds of presents or those kinds of presents, or present CE, in fact, as well as TS, and just being aware of that. So, yeah. And finding community, I think, is so key, which is, I think, what's great about, things like this summit is it's connecting people all over the world, and knowing there's thousands of people watching this. You're not alone.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Chris. These are really great tips and very practical things that parents and teachers of preschoolers can use. And I know we're all looking forward to I don't think I've been this excited about it's not my book, but I just think it would be really, really useful to use in the classroom, and kids love looking at stuff like that.
Yeah.
And things. So, but thank you for all the great suggestions you gave us as a parent, and for teachers in schools, and lots of ideas there that we can implement and bring to children across the world. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to talk again, and it's so nice to reconnect. Yeah.
Great. All right. Thank you.
Great.